are talking Peninsula, also known as Train to Busan 2, although there is no Train to Busan in this movie, hence why it's probably called Peninsula. This one is directed by Sang Ho-yeon, and of course the follow-up to the quite well-regarded first movie, Train to Busan, which a lot of people say it was one of the best kind of zombie movies ever made. I actually didn't review that first film, and although I have seen it, and although I did enjoy it, I don't know if I would put it up there with one of the best kind of zombie films ever made. I liked it, but I wasn't as blown away with it as other people have been. But I still do think it was a good film. Anyway, this one takes place 4 years after the original movie, and we have a team of 4 Koreans, including one soldier and his brother-in-law, are sent to go back into Korea to retrieve a money truck that has been abandoned within the kind of the chaos. And they're kind of now living in Hong Kong, and then we have these Hong Kong gangsters that are willing to kind of send these 4 Koreans back to try and retrieve this money to obviously spend and get rich, etc. However, once they are in the aforementioned Korea, which is now, of course, a essentially desolate wasteland, there are, of course, zombies roaming around, but there is also different factions of humans that, very much like The Walking Dead, if you have seen that, there are good guys and there are bad guys. Anyway, so let's talk about, first of all, what I liked about this movie. This movie does have some quite exciting set pieces. The film is actually fairly high-octane action for a quote-unquote horror film. So much so I wouldn't actually say it's really a horror film, and it's probably more of an action film, because we don't really see any creepy moments. There's not really any gory moments. There are, you get zombies that are decaying, obviously, but you never really particularly kind of, horrific in any type of way. But there are lots of kind of like actions, and I've even seen this movie compared to the likes of the Fast and Furious movies, because there's a big kind of chase sequence at the end of the film that will actually remind you of probably Mad Max 2 in a lot of ways, but a lot of people liken it to Fast and Furious from what I've kind of seen so far. I quite enjoyed our main character, this kind of this soldier who is feeling guilty for the death of his family and also something that he did in the past. I quite liked his character, quite kind of stoic, doesn't say a whole lot, but you get I think he's well played in the fact that you kind of get the impression that he's tortured without him, really kind of having to kind of like have tons of exposition and stuff like that. I quite like some of the kind of like the gags in regarding these 2 little children that end up kind of helping, and one of the youngest one uses kind of remote control cars and stuff like that to kind of herd the zombies in a particular direction. And certainly this movie feels like it's a real end of the world spectacle, although it is really only taking place in Korea. But we do see lots of kind of like wide angle shots with kind of the devastation and the kind of the ruined cities and stuff like that. But I think this movie is a big step down from the first movie. To me, there is lots of kind of like niggling problems. As I've said, this movie doesn't want to commit to being a horror film. We don't really see any real, what I would consider, gore outside of just kind of bit of makeup on people. There's no real creepy moments, as I've said, again. But the other thing as well is, to me, there's just things that don't make sense. If we're meant to believe that this is 4 years after the zombie apocalypse, I don't understand how the zombies are still more or less kind of like looking the same as they did 4 years ago. There doesn't seem to be any type of decay on them outside of what they would have been in the first movie and things like that. They seem to be able to kind of run around and things like, regular kind of people, even more so. They seem to be more acrobatic in a lot of ways. So that kind of bothered me. This movie has a massively, overly, heavily over-reliance on CGI. I mean, there's scenes here where cars are just kind of driving around doing skids, and they do it CGI, and quite poorly, to be honest with you. I didn't like some of the kind of the CGI here. It looks really kind of like rubbery. And some of the scenes here just seem like couldn't you just do this in live action? It doesn't seem to be too outrageous. I mean, there are some scenes that are bigger spectacle, which I get would probably be easy to do in CGI, but it just seems that they have overused it here. The bad guys, I feel, you know, if you compare this to Walking Dead, which I think is probably a comparable idea here because of the, you know, we've seen this theme in Walking Dead where we have humans that are selfish and kind of, you know, they want to have the New World Order. The characters here, and again, this might be somewhat of a translatorial thing, but they just seem cartoony and silly. They don't seem particularly threatening, and that you don't really understand how they've managed to survive because they just seem like a bunch of goons, to be honest. There is a really cheesy, and I've seen people go, oh, it's so emotional at the end. To be honest with you, I get the scene what they are talking about, but it just seems like so sappy and sentimental. Overly kind of like cheesy, if you ask me. And to be honest with this, I got to be honest with you, I found it dragging in many times. The zombies really are not the focus of this film. This movie is a focus on humans and these kind of different factions that I feel too exaggerated. And I got to say, although I was, you know, I was mildly entertained throughout the whole thing, I found this movie to be a little dull, to be fair. I'm going to give this one a 5 out of 10. I think it has spectacle at least. I quite liked our main character, but it's a step down from the original. And it's a completely different tone from that first film. So 5 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.